Hi, I'm Dave Ingebretson, and LeRoy Hyatt and I would like to welcome you to another edition of Fly Tying, the Angler's Art. Tonight, LeRoy, we've got another mixed bag for them. We're going to start out with a steelhead fly. We've tied those before, but we've never tied a Spey fly. And we'll have more to say about what makes a Spey fly and why they're becoming so popular.
Very popular.
But we're going to tie the rusty spider Spey fly.
Correct.
Then we're going to tie another tiny emerger, the Trico emerger floating nymph, and finish up with a probably the most classic streamer there is, and that's the gray ghost.
Gray ghost.
The gray ghost.
Yes.
So tell us about what you're going to use on this Spey fly.
Okay, the rusty spider. We'll use a reddish brown hackle. This will be palmered over the body. We'll use a gold flat tinsel. I'll also use an oval gold tinsel. This will become the rib. A yellow floss. The body material, most pattern books call for seal. You don't find much seal anymore, so we have substitutes for it. And then the hackle, the collar on it, will be a dyed lemon wood duck, and the orange will be the tying thread.
Now let's see, you said a dyed lemon wood duck. It's really a dyed mallard
Dyed
flank.
mallard, dyed lemon color.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I'm using an orange tying thread. I have a size 2 hook in the vise.
And again, you can tie this in your standard steelhead sizes, but
And they'll tie them a lot bigger than this,
they'll tie them
too.
bigger than that,
A lot bigger.
and some smaller.
Yes.
But the Spey flies often are quite large, 2s and 4s.
Because you're looking for that movement, that
absolutely.
imitative movement. All right, I'm going to tie now what they call a tag. Will be a flat gold or a flat gold tinsel.
You're going to tie that around the bend a little bit or not?
No, I'm not. I'm starting right above the bend of the hook.
And this is a point, sometimes we tie them totally on the hook, almost low water style, and sometimes they wrap that tag way back so it goes part way around the bend. And it simply depends on the effect you're trying to achieve and what the pattern calls for.
I've never seen this one tied like that. It well may have been.
Well, I think a lot of the Spey flies, they tend to tie on the shank of the hook, more low water style.
I think you're right. Now I'll tie a yellow floss on here. This will become the butt section of the fly, and I want it about the same. I'm going to go back over that gold tinsel just a little to make sure it's all married together.
And interestingly enough, this fly does not have a tail.
No, it does not. No. And I want that yellow section to be about the same size as the gold tag I put on. Now I'm going to put in a hackle that will be palmered forward. This is a brown hackle, dyed brown rooster hackle. We'll also need a rib. This is the oval gold that we'll go through. And then we're going to dub it. This is where that rusty it's supposed to be seal, but it's definitely not seal, will come from.
You can use a rabbit dyed or blended to the proper color. And also it's probably a good idea, since the original was seal, to put a little sparkly yarn, antron or something in there to give it that sparkle that seal would have.
There is a material out there now. It's called, I want to say Angora goat or African goat, something like that.
Well, there's something else called
Seal-X or
something too. It's artificial seal.
I have.
But if you're making up your own, you can make it, blend it to the proper shade out of rabbit, throw in a little maybe rusty antron yarn to give it some sparkle, and toss it all in the blender.
And I'll just keep coming forward with this. I don't really care if this is going to come out on the loose side, because that will actually give more movement, and I'm going to put a ribbing over it anyway. Right. So
I think
that
the thing
won't make
here is you
any
want
difference.
it to be a little fuzzy sticking out between the rib.
Yes, and it will. I'm not sure I need that much more dubbing on it. We'll see. And then just keep going forward. Now I have to get up here at the front and leave room for my collar to wrap on, so I don't want to get up there too close. Now I'm going to wrap my palmer, my hackle forward. And I don't want a whole lot of wraps of this. If you get 4 or 5 wraps in it,
that's what I usually think, about 5 wraps.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah.
I'll tie that down. And now, because I wrapped the hackle in that direction, got some fiber sticking out here. I'm
And
going
that
to,
is, you wrapped in the normal
in
clockwise
the normal
direction.
clockwise,
Yeah.
I'm going to reverse wrap, instead of going the same direction, I'm going to reverse wrap this oval gold. And again, about the same number of wraps.
Well, that'll greatly strengthen that
Oh,
palmered hackle.
yes, it will.
And when that 25-pound steelhead takes a bite out of that fly, you won't
Hey,
pull your hackle loose.
I don't care if
I hate
he
it when
does
that
pull
happens.
my hackle loose. Yes.
Yeah, I can have as many 25-pound steelheads tearing up my flies as they want to. I really don't care.
There's that. Now it's all bound down.
All right, now tell us what. This doesn't look that much different from
No.
another fly. What makes it a Spey fly?
Well, this will be the next hackle you tie on. This is this mallard flank, this dyed a lemony color, and I'm going to tie it in by the tip. I'm going to clip a little bit of those.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
Clip a little bit of those fibers off. Then we're just going to lay this in there, pull it back to the length I need it.
Well, the fact is that the thing that makes this the Spey fly is this ultra long hackle.
Yes, yes.
And this is the problem with tying a Spey fly, is finding the suitable long feathers to use.
Well, they used to use a spade from an actual rooster, a spayed rooster. That is now extinct. It's now extinct. Then they went to a heron. Heron, of course, you can't use anymore. And now they're starting to use a lot of a bird called a blue-eared pheasant, which will be a substitute for that too. Now as I go around, I'm going to stroke those fibers to the rear. And you can see where that's really starting to pull.
Yeah, the idea is we want to have these long
Yes.
fibers that are going to move in the water.
That will move. That's
And of course,
correct.
now out here in the west, we're seeing a big rise in the long Spey rods that were originally designed to cast these flies and let them swim in the current. Now, of course, you don't need a Spey rod to cast a Spey fly.
No, absolutely
But
not.
the fishing technique that lets this fly swim just under the current, under the surface, it's not a deep fly usually, I don't think.
No, just, in fact, when I fish flies like this, I'm on a floating line.
Yeah, fishing just under the surface.
Yes. And it'll cast across, let the fly swim. I don't like to leave a slack line with it at all. I want to keep that line tight at all times. And I'm just building a small head here in front. Now you can see how that really does stream back over everything. Now when I do steelhead flies like this, I'll put 8 or 10 turns of whip finish on, and then I'm going to do it again. Whether that's necessary or not, I don't know, Dave, but I do it just for my own personal satisfaction. I would also then put 2 coats of head cement on. I'll put one on, let it dry, then come back and put another one on.
I always do that because I like a nice glossy head on my steelhead flies.
In fact, when you're using black, and you get a good grade of head cement, it'll almost look like a little black marble.
Oh yeah,
up
well,
there
and you
in
know you
front.
can also use black head cement.
Yes, that's true.
That dries very glossy.
That's true.
But I like to not be able to see the thread.
Oh, okay.
I like to put 2 or 3 coats of cement on there.
Sure. Well, that's a rusty spider Spey fly. We used flat gold tinsel for the tag. We used yellow floss for the butt. Used brown hackle for palmering, gold oval rib, and the wood duck, or the mallard flank dyed lemon.
All right, now we're going to tie another emerger, a CDC Trico emerger.
Tiny little fly.
Tiny little things, actually 20s, 22s, 18 would be a big one. And I think that's what you're going to tie as an 18. What are you going to use to do it?
Okay, we'll have the tail will be a brown partridge. The body is going to be a lemony color wood duck. I'm back on the other fly. Rabbit. We'll rib it with silver wire. The wing case will be the canard feather in the white, and the thorax will be black. I use the standard black tying thread. I have the size 18 in the vise, and I'll dress the shank.
Now, normally you tie those in size 28, don't you? We're just doing this for the camera and making a big one.
Yes, right. Thank you. You're pushing your luck. Push me from a size 2 steelhead fly to an 18. Yeah, right. Okay, I'll take a few fibers off for the tail. And you don't want this real long. A lot of people tie these way too long.
Well, remember, we're tying a tiny fly
Yes,
now,
we
so
are.
we just want a few fibers very short.
Get rid of those extra. Now I want the silver wire. This will be the ribbing. Show the segmentation of the fly.
And folks, I don't know if you saw that, but we'll remind you again, when you cut wire or tinsel with your scissors, don't use the points, but go way down in the jaws, so
Save your scissors.
the fine points are staying sharp.
Yes, yes. Or you'll be trying to cut something with your fine points
Right.
and it won't.
Or have even a separate scissors.
And again, we're tying such a small fly here. This has to be even sparser dubbing on the thread yet. And you sure don't need to go very far on these little guys. Now I'm going to go one wrap behind my ribbing. I think I'm going to have way too much dubbing. And then come forward.
Well, you could tie an 8x long, 18.
Yes, that would probably handle it. And now I'm going to reverse wrap my ribbing. Tie it down. And then the part that maybe some people would have trouble with, I may have trouble with it, is we tie a little set of legs on either side of this fly, kind of like a little outrigger. Trying to get as few fibers off there as I can. I have 4 or 5.
And you know, if I were tying this and having trouble getting those in there, I might even be tempted to just leave them off.
Oh, I don't know that it's going to.
But they do look very nice, and I
Yes,
think you
they
should put
do.
them in if you can. But if you're tying a 22 and have trouble getting those legs in, we'll just eliminate them.
And I'll take another small section off over here. And again, try to get 4 or 5 or whatever you had on the first one. And again, don't worry about how long you tie it in. You can always grab the butts and adjust them accordingly.
You make a couple turns of thread, then adjust the
Yes.
length, then tie them
Then
down and
pull
cut them
the
off.
length.
Yeah.
Get rid of that butt section now. And now I'm going to tie the CDC feather in. And all you're going to use here is just the very tip of the feather. Stroke all the fibers
Basically,
forward.
what we're looking at is an emergent wing. The wing hasn't gotten to be a full wing yet, and it's out of the case and pumping up. And
Right.
so it's a little longer than a wing case, but not as long as a wing.
Get that off. And then we'll use just a very little bit of black dubbing that we'll have for the thorax area. And I won't put much on. Maybe then you won't give me all the abuse this time, huh?
Well, I'm trying to hold my tongue.
I thank you.
No, I think you're doing a great job. I mean, I won't tell them that you were absolutely scared to death of this fly. That you just, oh, I didn't hear the end of that.
Yeah, this is one that we don't tie over here a whole lot, that's for sure. And there's the floater, the emerging CDC.
It's an excellent fly to have if you get into a Trico hatch. And Tricos are found all over. The West and the East and the Midwest, there are going to be Trico hatches. And it's an excellent fly to have.
There's the brown chucker or partridge tail and wing, the light colored body for the dubbing, ribbed with silver wire. It has black rabbit thorax and a white CDC feather.
Well, now, LeRoy, after tying that tiny Trico, we're going to go to the opposite extreme and tie what I think will be the largest fly we've tied on the series.
6X long
6X
hook.
long streamer. Probably the most well-known streamer pattern there is, the Gray Ghost. This was originated in 1924 by Carrie Stevens up in Mooselook-Maguntic, Maine.
Oh, really?
And tell us what we're going to use to tie it.
Okay, a lot of materials. We'll use some flat silver tinsel, where you're going to use a blue dun hackle. This is a neck. This will be for a wing. We'll use peacock herl, orange floss, standard 6/0 black thread. Again, we'll use the golden pheasant crest, optional step jungle cock. We use white bucktail and silver pheasant. Now I have this 6X long hook, and you're right, this is, I'm sure,
Well,
the biggest one.
She tied these very large, and in fact sometimes tied them on tandem hooks as trolling flies. And these were tied for Atlantic and landlocked salmon up in Maine to imitate smelt patterns. And of course these bait fish were quite large. Now I've tied gray ghost on a lot of different sizes. You can tie them much smaller than that. I've had good luck on smallmouth bass and trout, and they're very popular flies.
Smallmouth bass, I'll bet it'd be a
Oh
knockout.
yeah, but I thought as long as we're doing it, let's tie one like Carrie did, and that's long.
Okay, I'll put the tag on. Now the tag will go down just where it starts around the bend of the hook.
Yeah, actually wrap it around the bend.
Yes, and then I'll come back up.
You know, Carrie, her husband was a game warden up there in Maine, and she used to sit in her cabin by the upper dam pool, I guess, and tie these flies, and she never had a fly tying lesson. She taught herself,
really?
and she came up with some innovative ways of doing things I might mention as we go. We'll see what happens. But she was quite secretive, and no one really knew her methods until she shared them a few years later with someone.
You know, I've never known a secretive fly tyer.
No? Well, there are some.
I know there are.
I'm being a little facetious there. She shared her secrets finally with Joe Bates. Joe Bates wrote the book on salmon fly tying and fishing, probably to this day the book on salmon fly, on streamer fly tying and fishing. I corresponded with Joe for several years, and I've got a Christmas card that he sent to me. I've got taped inside the cover of his book. I
really?
treasure that a lot.
Sure.
But this is still the standard reference for historical facts on fly tying. And the Colonel Bates streamer, he's the colonel. He is Joe Bates, the colonel. That was another fly that Carrie Stevens created.
Now you can see this floss is starting to fray a little bit. Going this far, that floss should be in a bobbin.
And you're doing it just exactly right because the body is slim.
Very thin.
Yeah, and that was characteristic of the fly.
Now I'll run the rib forward, and this will be the silver. And again, you don't want a whole lot of wraps on here. You need to space them out.
You need plenty of space for the body to show through, but try to have them even is what you want to do. Make sure they're even.
And then we'll clip this off. Then we'll take 4 strands of peacock for a throat, they call it.
Yeah, what will happen is these 4 strands, when the fly gets wet and everything comes together, they'll represent the dark lateral line down the sides of the smelt.
I'm going to turn this fly upside down with this vise and just tie this in that way. Get rid of the butts. Then we'll take some white bucktail.
Now keep in mind, viewers, as you're looking at this, that it's supposed to represent a smelt. And you'll see it has the smelt coloration. It has the light belly. It's going to have the peacock in there for the lateral lines. And it will be quite smelt-like when we're done.
And you know, could also even almost any minnow
Sure.
it can imitate. Get rid of that. Then we'll take a golden pheasant crust feather.
And you know what she says about the golden pheasant? She said that's just in there just for pretty.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, it is pretty,
it seems to me she made the comment about being a woman, it was her prerogative to make them pretty too. And I really think
Did she fish at all?
I'm not sure. I don't know. But I tell you, a lot of the great fishermen of the day passed by her doorstep up there in Maine and used her flies.
Sure.
And she really had a reputation as a fly tying innovator, creative, some patterns that are popular to this day.
Now I've turned the fly back over. Now I'm going to tie an underwing on here.
I really think that the Gray Ghost is probably the most well-known. It's like the Royal Coachman. Everybody knows the name.
It's a beautiful fly.
Now,
I've taken 4 feathers out of that neck that we have and tried to even them out as best I can. These feathers will be considerably longer for the wing than the hook itself, and the hook is very long.
And I think it's important to use the large neck feathers rather than the narrow saddle feathers. If you look at pictures of Carrie's flies, that's the shape they had and that's the feather they used, where the feathers from a saddle that we often use for streamers are just too narrow to give the effect that she wanted.
Clip those. I'm going to tie those down just a little bit.
You know what Carrie used to do, since she didn't know any better, taught herself to do it, she would prepare the pairs of wings and the cheeks and the eyes as a one unit. And she'd match the feathers for one side and put a drop of glue on them. Then she'd lay the silver pheasant cheek on top of that and put a drop of glue on. Then she'd lay the jungle cock eye on top of that and put a drop of glue on.
Wow.
And she'd prepare a whole series of lefts and rights. And then finally she'd assemble them all together in the fly.
Just put them all together. What I've done now is just taken 2 of these silver pheasants and put 2 cheeks on it.
We might tell people, LeRoy, how you make those lay down so nice and flat.
The cheeks, as I tie it in, then I pull it back slightly through.
Pull it through under those turns of threads, and the same thing with the jungle cock eye, because you don't want these flared out, and that will lay it really nice and tight.
Needs to be tight against that wing.
You know, I was tying some bass bugs the other day and having trouble with matching up the hackle and getting them to flare out properly, and I tried her trick of putting a drop of cement on the butts. And it worked perfectly.
Oh, no kidding.
Worked perfectly. It's something I'm going to use when I need to.
So what, you just use regular head cement?
Well, I used your rubber-based cement, actually.
Okay.
But I think regular cement would do it.
I'm sure it would.
But I had some of the rubber-based right there.
Now, I know from reading these different pattern books, one little trick she did on the head, she would tie a band of red in that head section. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and do that for space of time here.
That was her trademark. She had a black head with a little narrow, maybe 5 turns at most of red in the middle of it. So it was black, red, black, and then she tied them with a real glossy head.
Then I'll get a whip finish on that. Now I'll put some head cement on it.
Now, isn't that a pretty fly?
That's a beautiful fly.
Isn't that pretty?
Is. Those jungle cock, they just really set everything off.
And if you don't have the real jungle cock, there are things you can substitute.
Oh, yes. Pheasant cheeks, pheasant church windows.
Guinea with the spots on.
Oh, yeah, guinea.
And put some head cement and stroke them down until they're narrow like eyes and tie them in.
Those cheeks lined up real well. I wasn't sure they were going to be the right size, but they did line up very well. And that's the gray growth streamer. We have the silver tag and rib, flat silver tinsel, underwing of peacock herl, white bucktail, and the golden pheasant crest, overwing of golden pheasant crest, the blue dun saddle, the cheeks of silver pheasant, and the jungle cock for the tag, for the eyes.
So we've had quite a show tonight. We tied the rusty spider spey fly for steelhead, the CDC Trico emerger.
Tiny little guy.
Tiny little guy, and now this great big gray ghost streamer to imitate a smelt pattern. So we've covered again a lot of ground. We hope we've given you some ideas, some things to try on your own, some new techniques. We hope you'll spend the week thinking about it, tying some flies, experiment on your own, have a good time, and tune in again next week. And we really do appreciate you watching. Thanks a lot, and goodbye. We'll see you next week.
Dave and LeRoy have produced 2 90-minute videos covering new and exciting tips on how to make your fly tying better and more effective. They introduce you to everything you need as a beginner and demonstrate helpful techniques for intermediate tiers. Fly Tying Techniques Volumes 1 and 2 are available by calling 1-800-883-0124. Cost of each video is $28.95 plus shipping and handling, or get the 2-volume set for just $52.95. You can also order the programs in this series. Each 90-minute videotape includes 3 programs for just $22.95 plus shipping and handling. To order Fly Tying, the Angler's Art videos and techniques tapes, call 1-800-883-0124.